A human girl had been told about a nearby mountain said to be the home of the last great dragon. The girl wasn't a warrior. She was just some middle-class daughter of a merchant. She didn't know what sort of crazy thought possessed her to visit that mountain to seek out the dragon. After hours of searching in the mountain, she was not prepared to come face to face, with the very creature she had been looking for. He was impossibly large. Just his head was larger than her body. He stared at her, and she stared back. Several moments of silence followed before she tilted her head, watching the mythical creature's eyes dilate slightly before returning back to normal. She could see intelligence there, so she spoke to it, telling him, of course, first and foremost, that she would not try to hurt him. She was surprised when the dragon snorted and gave her what had to be some sort of "seriously, as if you could hurt me" look. The girl smiled, and they spoke. For several weeks they spoke, growing closer in their bond to each other. The dragon's magic began to reawaken, and he was able to take on a different form. He was able to disguise himself with a glamour to appear mostly human. Over time, he made his presence known in the village. Not that he was a dragon, but that he was a traveling lesser lord of sorts that had chosen to take up residence in the village. More time passed, and he officially made an offer to the girl's father, who was all but happy to give his daughter's hand in marriage. At the time, the girl had only thought of the man as a friend. She thought that he had only felt obligated to her because she was the first to treat him as something other than a monster. But in the time leading up to their nuptials, he made it very apparent that he thought more of her than anyone else. She had classes with a local college, learning arithmetic and geography, as well as all the things that would serve her well as a merchant. Only now, those things would serve her as the wife of a young nobleman. Unfortunately, through the short chain of events involving the girl and one of her senior classmates, realized what the nobleman was, and in an act of vengeance against the dragon, attacked the girl right then and there, leaving her mortally wounded. Although it wasn't her body that he had wounded, it was her spirit directly. While magic wasn't the most common thing in the world, it wasn't quite an uncommon talent. That was one of the other reasons that the girl had been taking classes. Her dragon immediately came to her side in her moment of peril, only to find that her eyes were dull and she could not move. Although her body was alive, her spirit had been wounded beyond repair. Taking her back to his home, several people tried to aid her for days before the dragon, in a fit of anger and agony, took her away from her family and brought her back up to the mountain, where he took her to the highest point and assumed his true form. The dragon curled himself around her crumpled body on the ground and made one last-ditch effort. He prayed to his god. Not the god of humans, but the god of dragons. The god of dragons was unlike the god of humans, whom could care less for his subjects. The god of dragons had been waiting for this event for hundreds, if not thousands of years, ever since this dragon currently pleading for his help became the last dragon. The god of dragons took pity on his last son and explained that he could not bring the human back. At least, not the way that she was currently. The dragon stood vigil over her body for 7 days as he trusted his deity. He did not know what he had meant when he said she could not return to her the way she was before, but he would wait to see. On the 8th day, his god returned to him and smiled. He spoke to his subject and said that the human girl's body was no longer necessary. He then explained. He had managed to take the girl's spirit and give it a new shell. It had been thousands of years since the last time he had created a son or daughter, so he had been quite out of practice. But cutting off his rambling, he smiled at his son, and the girl stepped out from behind him. Except, she was not the same girl that she was before. The tips of her ears were pointed. Her cheeks had a slight sheen of scales. A few short horns sprouted from her head, and a large, powerful tail extended from her backside. There were other sections of her body that intermittently scales could be seen. and her feet and hands were somewhere in between human and creature. "I'm sorry that it took me so long, my son. It was long, tedious work, but it was worth it." The god nodded his head to the girl. She grinned, with all the personality of the girl she was before, and stretched wings from her back as her body transformed into that of a pure dragon. She was not nearly as large as her dragon, but she didn't want or expect to be. She curled up next to him, her scales scraping gently enough along his own. Then they both realized what this meant. The era of the dragon had come again, and the god smiled.